And welcome back, everyone. Since, the Spider-Man sets come out, I'm still buying packs of the Spider-Man stuff. I'm actually really enjoying the Spider-Man stuff. I'm surprised how much I'm enjoying it. I first saw that set. I'm like, I'll get some stuff from it, but I don't know if I'm gonna get a lot from it. Now I'm like, I'm kind of actually enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would. And obviously, but my goal is to stop when I pull, whenever I'm able to pull, if I'm ever able to pull, a copy of the Soul Stone, no matter what copy it is. And I think when we all saw that there was an Infinity Stone in this set, we're like, okay, we know there's going to be more Marvel sets. And we know for a fact next year we're going to get Marvel superheroes, however many Infinity Stones are in that set. But beyond that, now that we know what the template for an Infinity Stone basically is, we are asking the question, what are the other stones going to look like? And what is the Infinity Gauntlet itself going to look like? And how will it interact with the stones? So I figured that'd be a fun video to do for just to kind of speculate for the future. Now, that being said, we do, like I said, have the template right here for what an Infinity Stone looks like. Almost certainly, almost certainly they're all going to be 2 mana, one of their respective color and one colorless. Legendary Artifact Infinity Stone, indestructible, Mana Rock for that color. They'll all also most likely have the ability of harnessing, which is pay 6 and 1 of that color. And basically exile a creature you control, harness this card. Now, that being said, whether it's exile a creature or do something else, that's going to be the big question, isn't it? With the Soul Stone, it does make sense for it to be a creature, because the whole idea is now you'll be able to return creature cards from the graveyard to the battlefield, anyone's graveyard, which is what kind of makes this card kind of busted in many ways. It's really not, the mana cost for 6 mana is a bit much, but they no, actually, you couldn't tap a Soul Stone to activate the Soul Stone ability. You do need 7 other mana. But regardless, it's still an immensely powerful card. So now that we have essentially the template, let's actually look at the other stones. Now, keep in mind, too, because this Soul Stone here is orange, like it is in the MCU, I'm going to just assume... I'm just going to assume that the other Infinity Stones are going to be the MCU color of the stones. I could be wrong on that. I could, but I'm just going to go under that assumption for now. With that being said, let's look at the first one I'm going to talk about. And I think this is the easiest one to talk about, the Power Stone. The Power Stone, we know in Marvel lore and the MCU, is representation of straight energy, raw power. It is the energy that has existed ever since the universe existed, while the universe exists, and past that. It is all the energy ever in the universe. In terms of raw power, the Power Stone is the strongest stone. In terms of raw power, it also enhances the other stones once it's in the gauntlet. Now, right out the gate, what color do I think this one's going to be? Well, I think this one is probably, based on the concept alone, going to be the red Infinity Stone, the red costing one. It'll be a red, indestructible, add 1 red mana, and harness for 6 of any color and 1 red. Now, do I think each of the Infinity Stones are going to have the same requirement to harness, exile a creature? We're going to have to wait till we see another Infinity Stone to confirm that. There's a very good argument to be made for yes, but there's also a very good argument to be made for no, because again, the Soul Stone is very unique. The Soul Stone can capture souls. It actually is sentient in its own way. It's one of the only stones that actually has a mind of its own. It has a pocket universe in there. It can, in fact, control souls. So the idea of exiling a creature to activate this card would actually make sense. For now, let's go and I'll say this. Assuming that they don't all have the same exile a creature effect, what would be the alternate effect for a red version of this? I mean, it might just be sacrificing a creature. It might be paying life. It might be destroying something along those lines. But I do think this will be the damage-inducing Infinity Stone. No doubt about that. It definitely will be that. Now, how much damage it does, that's debatable. Maybe if you're harnessing it for 7, it's going to just be doing 7 damage either across the board, or individually to either a player or a creature. But if maybe it might be a little less, maybe it's doing 5 damage, but it's just doing 5 damage to each opponent and creature that opponent controls every turn. I mean, that's very possible. So we know it will have to do with damage. I think everyone can agree on that. That or it's just going to straight up destroy something. Like it will just destroy something every turn, and maybe deal damage based on the mana cost. That I think actually might be a really good trade-off. Actually, destroy something every turn and deal damage based on the mana cost. So the Power Stone, I don't know. The Power Stone is a pretty, I think, straightforward one to be talking about, especially when you talk about what color it's going to be. And yeah, I think we need to bring up right now, one of these stones is almost certainly going to be a colorless. I don't think that's actually in debate, because there's only 5 colors in Magic. And I doubt you're going to just dual up one of the colors in the on the stones if each one is representative of a single color. So the question then becomes, which one's going to be which, and what's the other one going to look like? Well, first off, let's get down to the remaining color. We'll figure that out when we're done dealing with the remaining colors. And so that leaves us with white, green, and blue. This is where things start to get a little weird. Because honestly, things like the Mind and the Time Stone could both be in blue. But because both of those are blue-based abilities. But if you're going to twist my arm on it, I would say the more likelihood is that the Mind Stone is the blue one. While time manipulation does show up in blue, and it is in blue, it's frankly more often seen in mind control is textbook blue. Yeah, you do get some mind control shenanigans in red with like Act of Treason, but those are temporary. They're not like true mind control. It's more like you're kind of inducing a madness into someone and then they go crazy for a second. But if you want to talk about true, just like control, like taking control of things effects, it's almost always like 99% in blue. Maybe not 99, but like 95, 90% in blue. If that's the bulk. So again, you'd have a one blue, one of any color, Infinity Stone, artifact, legendary, indestructible, tap for 1 blue, harness for 6 of any color, and 1 blue. But what does this thing do when it's harnessed? Well, the mind is represented by your hand in Magic. So I have a feeling this thing would either let you just take a card from the opponent's hand, or just let you manipulate their hand in some way. Maybe discarding, although blue itself doesn't actually do a lot of discarding unless you're drawing cards on your own. It doesn't make opponents discard. Black does that more often than anything else. Not to say that blue doesn't have some cards that do that. I'm just saying, like, the way you discard is, frankly, make an opponent discard their hand and draw more cards. But my guess is more it's going to have to do something with the hand. Manipulating it, maybe even stealing things from it, maybe controlling an opponent's turn. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm going to get to that concept a bit later. Whatever it is going to be, it's going to involve the hand. My guess is maybe you're just taking a card from the hand every turn. That's going to be my prevailing theory at the moment. So that would be the Mind Stone. So that's your blue, your black, and your red. Now that leaves us with white, green, and colorless. I'm not going to lie. This starts to become really tricky. Now, believe it or not, though, and there is precedent for this in the comics, I think there's an argument to be made for the Time Stone being the green one. And yes, it being green is also kind of ironic, but because we have precedent for this, because in the comics, when Thanos is collecting the Infinity Stones for the very first time, I can't remember the name. He's called, I think, the Gardener. He literally has this garden, which he's been using to keep alive with the Time Stone. Time Stone represents the manipulation of time, obviously time stopping, forwarding, reversing. But in concept, that actually can work with things like nature and growth as well. So, and we know Simic is very much, manipulation of evolution, things along those lines. So I think the Reality Stone, though, admittedly could fall into this camp as well, if we're going to be honest. And in fact, if we're talking about who has the more time-shifting abilities in terms of color, white does show, have things like phasing out of, but white also does things like phasing out of like space protection. But to be fair, a lot of cards can do phasing, so that's really not specific. If you were to put my feet to the fire right now and ask me which one do I think is more, what do I think is more likely, colorless? I don't think time is colorless. I'm going to tell you right now, I do not think that. But do I think time is either green or white based on what I'm just based on my predictions right now? I would lean towards time. Honestly, I might take that back. I actually might lean towards time being white now that I think about it, because there is at least a bit more evidence for time manipulation in the color of white than there is in green. Although green certainly has that, but I think green actually works better, thinking on it, more for reality manipulation. We'll talk about a bit more about that in a minute. But talking about what the time stone would do, again, in this case, we'll think of white, one of any color, legendary artifact, Infinity Stone, indestructible, task for 1 white, harness for 6 white, 1 white, and again, whatever I forgot to, with the Mind Stone, I forgot to talk about what the harness cost would be. Probably discarding cards from your hand, my guess. In case of the Time Stone, Time Stone is very interesting as a concept for manipulation. What would be your, again, assuming it's just not another exile effect? I don't think you're giving up life. Maybe you honestly give up a turn, or you give up a phase. Maybe you give up your battle phase or something like that. I could see that, because the time is kind of the best way to represent time in the game would be the phases of combat. So if you're getting rid of one of your phases to activate the harness this ability, that could work. In terms, though, of what this card would do, time on the battlefield as a permanent, my guess would be, and this is only my guess, it would maybe have to be like the manipulation of phases of the battlefield. Like once per turn you choose at the beginning of your upkeep, choose a phase, draw phase, upkeep, main phase. For next turn your opponent skips that phase. Maybe it's something like that. I can't speak 100% to what the time stone is certainly the most, apart from maybe reality, the most difficult one to do. Speaking of which, reality. Now, we've talked about this. I think reality could actually be the green one, now that I think about it. It wouldn't, again, going by the manipulation of destiny and things along those lines, that's kind of how green's philosophy is a little bit. Everything has its perceived destiny. But something like green-blue, Simic, says, no, destiny is ours to manipulate. That is manipulation of reality. So, again, it would be green, tap for green, obviously. Hard. Now, what would the hardest effect be for this? Ooh. Exile maybe like one of like several different permanents, like exile land and enchantment, or exile two permanents with different types. But then that makes it more difficult to harness it. I imagine because they're all mythic, each of them only has a single requirement for harnessing. In terms of I don't know again, assuming it's not exile a creature, I don't know exactly what the actual effect would be. Manipulating reality in terms of the game state. I mean, you could, maybe it involves changing something's type. Like, if it's not a creature anymore, it can't attack. So turning a creature into an artifact, it's not an artifact creature. Or turning an enchantment you control into a creature with power and toughness based on its monocle. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If it's a land, maybe it just becomes a 1/1. Like, that would make a lot of sense to the concept of manipulating reality on the field, is that you're just literally transmuting things into other things. And it can work on your side of the field, or you could just start screwing with your opponent. That works really well, I think. So, as you probably guessed, My take on what I think the colorless stone is going to be, it's going to be the space stone, because honestly, space is oftentimes best represented as like the void, the blind eternities. The Eldrazi come from this void of space, emptiness. Like this, I think actually makes the most sense, in my opinion, to be the colorless stone, and to essentially be basically to be a I'm trying to think of a 2-color mono rock, or a 2-mana colorless mono rock. I mean, not be a soul stone, but something along those lines. And it would tap for colorless mana, obviously. It would be 7 for harnessing. And again, exiling a creature would actually probably make a lot of sense here. Because what this would most likely do is allow you to just blink the exile temporarily things out of play and then they come back. And this means you can just do your ETBs constantly. You're just going to be able to get rid of opponents' things on the battlefield, and they won't come back until your upkeep. That's the beginning of your end step, or I think it would be more exile target creature, or exile, I don't know, target whatever. Return it to its owner's battlefield at the beginning of their next end step. That's basically it. So for you, you'd get it back at the end of the turn. For your opponent, they'd get it back at the end of their turn, which would make sense. This is a mythic rare card. So yeah, ultimately, I think that something like that works well for the Space Stone as a whole. But now we have to ask the big question. What the hell? Because if you're having the Infinity Stones, you have to have an Infinity Gauntlet. How the hell is an Infinity Gauntlet going to work? Is it going to be one of those things that once you have all 6 stones, you win the game? I mean, that would make sense. It seems like a lot of work to do that. However, I don't think it's necessarily as hard as you think. What do I think? Because you can think of it as something akin to maybe either Gleemax or the Domination bracelets or bracers from Edge of Eternity, or Gleemax from the Unset, which I have in our effect deck. I use that. And it is kind of busted when you get Gleemax and Mox Lotus on the field at the same time. I have infinite mana to do whatever I want with no mana burn. And I have the ability to just control everything you target. So unless you can board wipe me in a realist, it's a stupid deck, but I love playing it. Okay, though, what do I think the Infinity Gauntlet can actually do? Well, first off, I think if you have an Infinity Stone on the field that you haven't, I think I'm going to just speculate on the mana. I think 5 mana. Okay, 5 mana, maybe 6. But I think it doesn't matter. If you have an Infinity Stone on the field, one of the things it's going to say is Infinity Stones are all harnessed automatically, as long as this card's on the field. And I don't know if the Gauntlet itself will be indestructible. I would like to think it would be. But I think, as long as it's on the field, your Infinity Stones are automatically harnessed. And then if you have all 6 Infinity Stones on the field, I assume it's going to either be an automatic win or just something stupid, like you're going to just completely control your opponent at that point. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm on a really good train of thought with it's good. Infinity Stones will just be harnessed once you have them on the field. Or once you have this on the field, you don't need to pay the harnessing cost. They're automatically harnessed without paying their cost. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I think, at least for the Infinity Gauntlet, that makes a lot of sense. I think I'm pretty close when it comes to things like the Power Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Reality Stone. The Space Stone and the Time Stone, though, are definitely the more nuanced. Let me rephrase that. The Reality Stone, I'm about 50-50 on. I really like that idea, and I think that really represents reality warping on the field. But I don't know. They could do something completely different. The real truth is, we're not going to have an idea of how well these stones are going to, how close I am, until we actually see more stones. That's what it is. Now, again, we get the Marvel superheroes, and I want to say it's mid of next year, sometime like June or July. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Until then, though, what do you think of the Infinity Stones of Magic the Gathering? Did you like the fact that they were getting the Infinity Stones? Do you like the Soul Stone? What would you do differently if you were going to do them? Do them differently, or what do you think the Infinity Stones are going to look like when we see them? And what do you think the Infinity Gauntlet's going to look like? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.